Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is Mitali Deypurkaystha. Mitali is the authority creator for vegan, plant-based, ethical, cruelty-free, eco-conscious individuals, helping them put their mission, movement, and message on the map. She's a keynote speaker and owner of the Vegan Publisher. Mitali is living her life's mission of creating an army of conscious, ethical thought leaders through publishing. So together, they can change the world one book at a time. Stick around. I want to introduce her to you. Hi, Mitali. How are you?
I'm very well, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. I surely appreciate it. And of course, the big question that I ask everybody who comes on the Vegan Pulse is, how did they get into veganism? Because it's important, as you know, stories are.
Stories are very important. Well, she's actually here. I can show you the reason for my veganism. Do you want to say hello, Isha? Or do you want to just hide away from everybody? I think she wants to hide away from everybody.
Come on, Isha.
Let me go and grab her. She may be a bit grumpy, but well, cats are born grumpy, let's be honest. A few moments. Come on. So this...
Hey, sweetie pie.
This is my Isha, and
hey,
she
beautiful.
is a rescue, and she came into our lives in 2010, I believe it was. She was a year old. Very cute, as you can see, very loved. I wasn't even sure that I wanted a rescue cat. It was my little sister who insisted that we rescue a cat. And within a few weeks, this little being was just showing me so much sentience, very aware of the different characters in my family. And we do have some characters in the Deypurkaystha family, I'll be honest with you. Strange characters, I'm one of them, but she was very aware of the different characters, who needed her the most that day, who had a bad day at work, who'd had a bad day at school. My little sister was still at school at the time, and she would go and nurture them, and I just was watching this little being walking around our family, and I just thought, cats are not even in the top 20 of most intelligent animals, and sadly we eat one of the most intelligent animals, pigs. And that's when I just thought, I can't do this. So I didn't even, a lot of people, do you want to go down, my darling? She's like, yes, stop parading me around for people to look at. So I'm going to put you down. There you go. Off you go, pet. And I couldn't even, a lot of people go from being a carnivore to, you know, becoming vegetarian and then becoming vegan. I just did the whole thing. I went from rare steak and cold meats and cheese board kind of woman to I've got to be vegan, because the process took 3 years. I did that whole I'll only eat meats from humane farms. I did all that nonsense that we all go through, where we try and make ourselves feel better for doing what we're doing. So the whole process took 3 years, but then once it happened, that was it. I couldn't even be vegetarian. It just had to be the whole thing. I just didn't want any animal products in my mouth, on me, on my life at all. It was done, and that was over 10 years ago now.
Awesome. Congratulations and thank you. You know, I always like to say thank you, because you are saving lives. You are actually saving the world.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. It's amazing that we come into veganism with so many different stories. Some people come into it for health reasons. Some of it come for animal rights. Some of it come in for sustainability and climate change. But once you're in there, all of these reasons start to come in. So for me, it was animal advocacy. But now I realize how much healthier I am. My skin is so much better. I feel so much better. And also knowing that I'm doing my part in whatever we can do to save this very fragile planet that we're on. So it's interesting. We all come at it from different reasons. But once we're in there, we take on all of the reasons.
I came into it for the animals. You know, once I made the connection about the suffering, I'm like, I do not want to cause that. And I was so grief-stricken that I have done that for so many years and not have made the connection. So, but I always say we welcome anyone for whatever reason you come into veganism, because ultimately it all works.
Yes, it doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't really matter why you're doing it. You're just doing the right thing.
And usually once you come in for one reason, and then you start to find out so many things about what veganism entails. For me, it's a social justice movement because it entails so many things, the environment, animals, humans, and so on. So I just like to say thank you. And for everybody else, those pre-vegans out there, we're waiting for you.
I love the fact that you use that term. I shorten it even further. I call them pregans.
Oh,
It
that's cool.
sounds like some sort of massive cult, doesn't it? But I call them pregans because they are, you know. I was actually at the Just V show in London over the weekend, listening to a number of people talking. I was listening to Klaus from Plant Based News, and he was just saying in the next 10 to 20 years, it's inevitable. People who are right now saying, I will never go vegan, they won't even know that they've gone vegan. It's just the systems will come into place where it just makes sense for the food to be vegan, for the clothes that we wear to be vegan, to everything to be vegan. You know, even things like investments. I have a wonderful friend who's able to invest pensions and savings into vegan companies. So your pensions are not being used to fund animal agriculture, for example. So it's just going to get to a stage where we're accidentally vegan. And I can't wait for that day, to be honest.
I can't wait for that day either. And, you know, the thing is that there's not going to be another choice. If we want to have a livable planet, eventually, whether, you know, kicking and screaming or not, the world's going to be vegan because that's the only way that it's going to survive.
True.
Well, talk to me about being the authority creator.
Well, what I do is I help people. I mainly work with entrepreneurs and experts within the vegan, plant-based, ethical world. And it's all about writing a book that establishes your authority. I know you're an author yourself, although you're a children's author, so different to what I'm doing. I help people write nonfiction books. However, it has the same effect. You know, there's something about writing a book that makes you stand out. I remember before the pandemic, oh my God, that feels like so long ago now. But before the pandemic, when I used to do in-person talks, and I'd go into a room and I would tell people to stand up, and I would say, okay, I want you to tell me how many of you are using social media for your business or your brand. And everyone would say standing up, because who doesn't use social media in this day and age? And then I'd say, okay, how many of you guys have a website? And again, most people stay standing up. You might get one or two people sit down, you know, influencer type of people. And then I'd say, okay, how many of you guys have business cards? And again, most people stay standing up. They're in person at a networking event. And then I'd say, okay, how many of you have written a book? And then there's all this shuffling and seeing people sitting down. Sometimes the whole room will sit down. There is no author in the entire room. Every so often, one or two people might stay standing up. And usually the room just bursts into a spontaneous round of applause. And I always think that's interesting, isn't it? No one does that. No one says, oh, well done, you've got a website. Or, oh, well done, you're on LinkedIn. No one says that. But as soon as they know you've written a book, it's like, oh, wow, tell me more about your book. There's that instant, wow, you must really know what you're talking about if you've written a book on the subject. So what I do is I place vegan and plant-based and ethical entrepreneurs as authorities in their subject. So they're, for selfish and selfless reasons, I always work in tandem with both. I think if you're completely selfless, then it's not sustainable. You have to look out for yourself. You've got to look out for yourself, for your family. You need to have financial independence and financial dependability for the future in order for you to then go out in the world and do good for the animals, the environment, for other humans. At the same time, you don't want to be just thinking about yourself. We've all seen what capitalism can do when it's just used for selfish reasons. So my goal is to all of my clients is to position them as the authority in their chosen subject. So for selfish reasons, they can earn more in what they do. They can have the financial stability. They can pay the bills comfortably, so they don't have to worry about that. And then they can concentrate on all the wonderful selfless things that they're doing to make this world a vegan, normal planet, which is what we're all aiming for.
Right. A vegan planet, which would be actually the true normal.
It's amazing that we've got so far away that, you know, just being compassionate and kind is like, oh, aren't you a good person? How is it? Why is that just not the normal thing that we do? Just being compassionate to all beings.
Exactly.
Interesting, isn't
it? So I am thinking about writing a book and I have a subject matter in my brain and I come to you. And so where do we go from there? How does the process begin?
Well, the process begins, first of all, with research. That is one of the most important things, because these types of books are very different from fiction books. Although fiction books can be inspired, certainly, from other books and events and even people and characters in your life. But ultimately, it's an internal thing. It's a world that happens inside the author's brain. Whereas it's the opposite when you're writing a nonfiction. You have to get out there and find out what your audience really wants to read about. And they may surprise you. They may surprise you. I've had a number of clients who've come to me with very fully made ideas of what their book should be about. And they even try to fight me and try to skip my steps for research. And I'll just say, okay, hold on. Let's just do these steps anyway. And if you're right, then all that's happened is we verified that you're right. So that's not a bad thing. However, if we go through these steps and find out that your audience actually wants something different, isn't it better we course correct now, as opposed to all the time and effort and money it takes to publish a professional book to then find out no one wants to read it, you know? So they go through the steps, and I would say about 1 out of 2 of my authors course correct, and they go, oh my God, thank God you forced me to do this. So I would say the first thing is you really need to get out there. It's amazing how, as entrepreneurs, I've been guilty of this myself, we think we know our audience. The thing is, our audience are always in a state of change. So you could literally ask them the same question 6 months or a year down the line, and they may give you a different answer. So it's all about gauging the temperature of your audience right now and finding out what it is, what are their problems, what solutions are they wanting from you, and creating a book regarding that. It is a very different process to fiction. In what you're doing is, I almost say it's a bit like being a journalist. You don't just go and make up stories as a journalist. Well, if you do, you're a terrible journalist, really. Unfortunately, there are journalists out there. We've all seen those headlines where journalists and papers have been sued because they've just made stuff up just to get headlines. It's terrible. It's all about having integrity as a journalist. And it's the same thing when you're writing a nonfiction book. It's getting out there, finding what your audience wants and delivering it. And I promise you, if you do that, if you take those steps to research first, instead of just going off and writing your book, you'll be so happy because you're being selfless. You're actually finding what your audience wants and then you're giving it to them, as opposed to you thinking what they want and hoping and keeping your fingers crossed that is what they want.
Right. And like you said, a fiction book is a bit different than a nonfiction, because a fiction book, yes, it could inspire, but it's more entertainment.
Yes.
Where a nonfiction book is more educational, and it can also inspire, but it's more about facts than anything else.
That's it. We've even found, Nancy, that people read books differently. So I don't know if you're aware, but when people are reading nonfiction books, the average reading age drops to a 12 to 14-year-old because they're rushing through the text. Because when people read nonfiction books, so self-help, how-to, or guide-style business books, they've been promised a solution. So they have an issue and they've been promised a solution. I mean, it could be many different things. I have authors who write about health, losing weight. I have authors who write about financial planning. I have authors who write about all kinds of things, whatever their business is about, whatever their plant-based, ethical, vegan business is about. But the one thing that ties them all together is they're promising a solution to the reader. So the reader is kind of rushing through the book, trying to give me the solution. I want the solution in my life. Very different to fiction. You don't rush through fiction. You savor it. You take time with it. You're building this world in your head. So it's knowing these things. And when you know these things, then you can write to the best of your ability because you're aware of exactly what the reader is expecting from you.
Absolutely. Like you said, reading a fiction is about getting lost in that world that somebody has, created for you, and you visualize it in your head, however you want to make that world. But when it comes to nonfiction, I'm one of those. Okay, so what's the answer?
That's it.
And do you have an answer? Because sometimes there are books just like you see in the news store, you know, in a TV news. At 11 o'clock, we'll come back and let you know how the crocodile got into, and then they go on and on and on, and they never tell you. They just go on and on and on with a story. And then at the end, well, what happened?
Exactly. And it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. Well, tell our audience, how do they get in touch with you? If they have this idea, do you have like a consultation? Can they reach you by email?
Yes, you can find me. I'm very easy to be found. Well, first of all, with that ridiculously long surname, Deypurkaystha, there isn't many of us on the planet. So type that in anywhere and you'll find me. I'm known as the Vegan Publisher. So if you just put in Vegan Publisher into any of the major social media platforms, you can find me and send me a message, or you can just email me at mitali@theveganpublisher.com. But the best bit of advice I would give you is if you're thinking of writing a book, go and read my book. So I've written a book, The Freedom Master Plan. It came out a few weeks ago and it became a bestseller. And it's geared towards vegan, ethical, and plant-based entrepreneurs. And it's case studies of some of my previous clients and what they did with their books. And I think it's always a great place to start, because there's a lot of people who want to write a book, but they're just not sure, well, how would it fit in with my business? What, you know, I publish a book, what the hell do I do with it after that? You know, there's a lot of people who aren't aware of the journey. Like, it's not just a case of you publish a book and the world stops turning and you turn into a megastar. I wish that was the case, but life isn't that easy, unfortunately. It's all about what you do with the book next. So I would say, go and read my book, The Freedom Master Plan. Go and read the case studies of some of my clients. That will give you a real understanding of what it is to write a book for your business or your brand. And then you can make that decision whether you think it'll fit with your business and whether it's a good idea for you. Or if it isn't, that's still a result as far as I'm concerned. You now no longer have to torture yourself about whether you should write a book or not. So I will say, go and read my book, because that will really give you an understanding of what a book can do for you. And then if you feel a book is right for your business, get in touch with me. All the details are in the book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mitali, for being on the Vegan Pulse. And we'll have all your social media information. And if you want to write a book and you want to do it the right way, then you need to contact Mitali and read her book.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, Mitali.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to check out our website, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose, live vegan,